Welcome to the de Havilland Aircraft Museum. A lot of people who come to the museum are interested in one particular era of aviation. Maybe you're interested in the Mosquito, for example, of which we have 3 at the museum. Or maybe the era of the 20s and the 30s, where we've got the Moth, we've got the Comet Racer. Or perhaps the post-war period, the Comet Airliner, or maybe the Cold War and the Vampire. But one of the eras which is sometimes neglected is the era of the feeder airliners just after the Second World War. That era is epitomised by the aircraft behind me, the DH114 Heron. And today it's my privilege to be joined by Kelvin, who's one of the volunteers here who works on the Heron. Kelvin, welcome to the channel. Good to see you.
Hi Dennis, how you doing, mate?
Great. So Kelvin, tell us a little bit about the history of this. When did this aircraft come into being? When was the first flight of this plane?
Well, they first thought about the Heron in 1945, but the first Heron flew on the 10th of May 1950, so not too long. Flew at Hatfield and was piloted by a Mr. Pike.
Fantastic.
Appropriate perhaps for a Heron.
Ah, right, okay. Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind this type of aircraft, because it's like a market that was not even in existence before the war, was it?
No, well, for this particular aircraft, the emphasis was on producing a simple, rugged design, which had good economic potential over short and medium distances. And also it's designed so that it can actually operate in areas where there's pretty poor infrastructure. As a result of that, on the early models we had a fixed undercarriage, obviously saved money.
Right, okay.
We had 4 Gypsy Queen 30 engines, which are not geared and unsupercharged, so pretty basic engines, but they were reliable and had a good service life.
Okay, so this is the Gypsy Queen engine you were talking about?
Yep, this is the Gypsy Queen. We've got 4 of them on this aircraft and they're all here. So we've got, they're not bad neck. I mean, there's a little bit of corrosion, which is an issue for aircraft that sit outside.
Sure, yeah, she's been out in the air a long time.
Out in the air a long time. But actually, if I just come over here, when you get hold of the old prop, you get around to here and it starts to kick back. So we've still got quite good compression in here. You can imagine this would be great somewhere like the South America or the outback of Australia, places like that.
So one other thing that interests me, Kelvin, is looking around at this aeroplane. My immediate reaction was, hang on, this looks a bit like the Dove, doesn't it? I mean, the cockpit in particular. You know, what's the link between that and the Dove?
Okay, well, the first prototype, Heron, in fact, was basically built out of Dove parts.
All right.
So the outer wings, the cockpit and the tail were actually all Dove units. And the keel between the cockpit and the tail was extended. Side panels are extended and the roof panels. Actually, although it's got a bigger cabin, these are actually just basically Dove items.
Okay, so it's sort of Dove on steroids, sort of.
It's definitely a Dove on steroids. It's got 4 engines instead of 2 and it's much bigger. You can take more people.
Great. All right, so looking at this undercarriage, this obviously is a retractable undercarriage, but you were saying that the original versions of the Heron, they had non-retractable undercarriage, right?
That's right, yes, they were non-retractable, which obviously helped in the design philosophy of keeping it very simple and very robust. And also for some operators, such as British European Airways, who operated the Highlands and Islands service, this was a big plus.
Right.
Landing at Barra, for instance, it was on a beach. It wasn't an airfield, it was a beach. But then they felt that some people wanted a little bit more fuel economy, a little bit more speed, so they designed the Mark II Heron, which had a retractable undercarriage. Actually gave them 20 mile an hour extra in speed and improved the fuel economy as well.
Great. So where did these aircraft get used?
Places like Norway, Australia, Salvador, Uruguay, Japan, so quite a range of markets. And then with the introduction of these Mark IIs with the retractable undercarriage, in 1954 things took off in terms of executive transports.
Right.
So Herons were actually used by a number of companies ranging from Rolls-Royce, which we have here, to Vickers Armstrong, to Ferranti, to Fiat in Italy, to Philips in the Netherlands. So yeah, it got around a little bit. And also it was part of the Royal Flight.
So are visitors to the museum allowed to see inside?
When it's dry like today and the field's firm and not muddy, most certainly we welcome people to come inside and experience an executive transport from 1950s. Come
Great,
on
well,
in. So
lead
come
on.
on in. Oh, that's comfortable, isn't it? Lots of leg room, brilliant. Don't get this in modern planes.
It's amazingly spacious, bearing in mind we're talking about the 1950s.
It is, isn't it? But this is the executive version. Only 8 seats. The normal version had 14 seats, and if they took the toilet out, there would be 17 seats, so it should be a little bit more crammed. But yeah, we've got all mod cons. We've got fresh air ducts up there. At ground level, we actually have a heating duct is here. So, you know, we've pretty much got everything that you would expect. No games consoles, but we make up for the lack of a games console. We've got a bar.
Really?
Yeah, but I checked it out earlier and it's got nothing in it. The buggers have drunk it all.
Never mind. Is there any chance we could have a look at the cockpit?
I think so. I don't think you'll be able to hijack this and take us anywhere unsafe.
Okay, lead on.
Okay.
Alright, so this is the cockpit of the 114 Heron.
Yeah, it's pretty standard actually. Looks very similar to the Dove, and in fact, if you have a look at the 146, the layout is also pretty similar. So basically, what you've got is you've got all the engine instrumentation down the middle. You've got your throttle controls here. You've also got your feathering for your propellers here. You've got your fuel control. You've got your trim. Speaking for myself, I just love the analog instrumentation. You know, so you've got these wonderful oil pressure gauges where you've got engines 1 and 2, 3 and 4, all port and starboard. And then you've got the same temperatures. I think they just look really cool.
Are we clear to taxi?
Well, we are, but we ain't going anywhere. This old girl's past its flying days now. So yeah, we're stuck on the ground, and that's where we'll remain.
Okay, well, thanks for showing us around, Kelvin.
No worries. Glad to do it. Been a joy. So, I hope you've enjoyed your tour of the Heron.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kelvin. So this is the Keep It Simple aeroplane.
Yep.
And they're quite rare. I gather that there were a number of conversions done. People like Riley and so on put extra engines on, changed some of the fuselage configuration. But there's only about half a dozen or so still around these days, and we're quite privileged that we've actually got one of them.
And unfortunately, I think since 2018 there are none been flying.
Right. Kelvin, thank you so much for showing us around.
Cheers, Dennis. No worries, mate.
So, hope you've enjoyed this video. Do like and subscribe. Keep in touch with us so that you can pick up other videos as we come on board. Check out our website, find out when our opening hours are, and come along and have a look at the museum and have a look around the Heron and a lot of the other aircraft that we have here in the museum. See you at the museum.